What's up everyone? So in the last video we covered variables and data types, and in today's video we'll be covering numbers and casting. So let's get into it. Okay, so as we said in last video, there are two numeric types. There are actually three, but you'll most likely only be using two of them. There's an int, which means integer, float, which means floating point number, and complex number. But like I said, most of the time you won't be using complex numbers. So we'll just be focusing on ints and floats. So here's just an example of creating variables to store integers and floats. So x is a variable that stores an int, and y is a variable that stores a float. And there's a lot of things that we can do with just these two variables. So if you come over here to the W3 Schools page about operators, you can scroll down. So basically an operator is used to perform like an operation on a variable. So if you scroll down to the Python arithmetic operators, these operators can be used on numeric variables. So for example, we can print x plus y. So you see we added the two variables and we got 3.5. You can use any of these and they'll work just as you would expect. And just a quick little side note, modulus means remainder. So you know, like if you divide a number, then sometimes there will be a remainder. The modulus operator will return the remainder from a division operation. So in summary, these operators can be used for integers and floats. Okay, another thing I want to talk about is the type function. So let me write out some stuff real quick. Okay, so type is a built-in Python function. And let me just demonstrate how we can use it. So first you say type, and then parentheses. And then inside of the parentheses, you pass in some sort of variable or object. So in this case, if I pass in x, and Python were to execute this, then this would be equivalent to an integer, because the type of x is an int. And just to show you, if we print the type of x, then you see we get class int. So it basically just means that it's an integer type. And just show you what y, see class float. And the type can be used on any variable or any object. So you don't even have to type in a variable. You can type in 1 or 10 directly, and then it should spit out that it's an int. So this is the type function, and it's useful when you want to know what type of variable something is. Okay, the next thing I want to talk about is type conversions. So let me write out some notes and then we'll talk about it. Okay, so type conversions are useful when we want to convert a variable or object to a different type. So in the first example, I'm going to convert an integer into a float. And so, so you see up here we have that x is an integer, and we want to convert it to a float. So to do that, we would say float, and then in parentheses pass in x. And now whatever this returns will be a float. So we'll set a equal to float x, and then we'll do the same thing for, but kind of in reverse. So we're going to convert y, which is a float, into an integer. So we'll just say, we'll create a variable called b and set that equal to int y. So now a contains the floating point value for x, and b contains the integer version of y. So let me just print out these values just so you can see. So you see it prints out 1.0, which indicates that it's a float. And for b, we converted 2.5 into an int. So it basically just threw away the decimal portion of the number and just kept the whole number part. And it didn't do any rounding or anything. It just threw the decimal part away. So that's the basic of type conversions, and type conversions will come up a little bit later on once we've talked about some other data types. But there's no need to worry about it too much as of now. Okay, the last thing I wanted to talk about is random numbers, because this is a pretty cool concept. So let me just show you what that looks like. So basically, random isn't built into Python, so we have to include we have to include a file that has like random specific functions. So that's what this statement's doing here, but we'll get into like the meaning of this a little bit later on. Basically, the import statement allows you to import like external files so that your code can use like code that's not directly in your file. Okay, so if we want a random number, then first we'll just create a variable to store it, and we'll call that num1. And we'll set it equal to random.randint. And then inside the parentheses, we have to pass in a low and a high value. And the low and high basically determine like the range of random numbers. So the low, if we set it to 0, and then the high is going to be 10, then this will generate a random number between 0 and 10. So let's just print num1 just to see. So you see we get 5, 8, 5, 5. Oh, that's not very random. Okay, there we go. 7, 4, 3, 8. So that's how you generate a random number. Don't worry too much about the syntax. Like, don't worry about line 21 too much. This will all make sense once we talk about modules and functions and stuff like that. So if this doesn't make too much sense now, don't worry. It definitely didn't make much sense when I was first learning, but this will make sense later on. So hope you all enjoyed. That's about it for this video. See you all next time.